All right, so here we are. We've just created our form. This is going to be txt user num. This is going to be btn submit. This is going to be lbl result. And so I want to make it so that I'm displaying numbers from 1 up to and including the user number. So what I'll do is I'll double click on the button and I'll start typing my code. And the first thing that I need to do is to enter my comments. So I'll say declarations. Get user input, any type of calculation, and then finally output. And in the declarations section, what you should be asking yourself is, what are those items that the user needs to give to me, and what are those things that I need to give back to the user? So I usually just go back to the form, and I notice that the user needs to give me some sort of a positive number. So over here, I'll just simply say dim user num as, and let's just make that a whole number, so that's going to be an integer. Now, what do I need to give back to the user? Well, the user is going to get a string of numbers, like 1 space, 2 space, 3 space, so forth and so on. So a bunch of numbers with a bunch of spaces in between those numbers. So the best thing for me to do would be to generate a string. I'll just simply call it output, and that'll be my output string, and I'll initialize it to nothing. So now I'm going to go to the get user input section and get the user's number. So that means that we assign to user number, I'm going to say convert dot to int 32 whatever is inside of the text box user number dot text. So this is going to obtain the text from the user's text box entry, which is up here. We take that text, we convert it into a whole number, and then we assign it to the variable user num, which, as you can see over here, has been declared as an integer. All right, so now that I have that, there's one more thing that I want to talk to you about, and that's declaring a counter. So over here, I'm going to say dim counter as integer. Now that counter is going to track how many times we need to loop through this program so that it displays numbers from 1 all the way up to and including the user number. So in the calculation section, this is what I'll do. Let me let the counter set that to 0. So in other words, you and I are going to have a race around a track, so that means that the counter needs to be set to 0 because we haven't finished our lap first. We're starting off at 0. Then I'm going to have you type the while statement. While the counter is less than the user number. Press enter. So while that is the case, as you can see, the end while statement automatically comes up. While the counter is less than the user number, we're going to keep on doing this loop. So this is actually a block statement right here that repeats over and over and over again. As soon as this is no longer true, then we jump outside of this while statement. All right, so what this does is it keeps on repeating as long as the counter is less than the user number. We call this over here a relational operator, so you're familiar with less than, greater than or equal to. So let me just create a bunch of these. So this is less than, this would be less than or equal to, this would be greater than, this would be greater than or equal to. This thing over here means not equal to. And then if I wanted to say just equal to, then it would be just that by itself. Okay? So these are all called relational operators. Now in this case, I'm asking as long as the counter is less than, I should say. As long as the counter is less than the user number, then we're going to keep on doing this. All right? So over here, what is it that we're going to do? Okay. Well, first of all, I'm going to take this output string, which you see over here, and I'm going to append to it. So I'll explain this in just a second. I'm going to append a space, and then I'm also going to append whatever the value of counter is. Now, I don't want from 0 up to the user number. I want from 1 up to the user number. So let me do the wrong thing first, and then we're going to correct it later on. So this is not the right thing. But that's okay. This will at least introduce the idea of concatenating a bunch of stuff together. All right, so after I do that, then I'm going to take this value of counter and I'm going to increment it by 1. So let me stop and review what's happened here. Remember that I just explained from our notes that this type of format in computer science where it says x is equal to x plus 1, it's not a valid mathematical statement, but this is a valid computer science statement. Take this old value, change it in some way, and now it's been updated. That's exactly the format over here. Take the old value of output, change it in some way, and now the new value of output is something different. It's updated. All right, what was the old value of output? It looks like it was nothing. Okay, but now when we get to this statement over here, what we're going to do is we're going to take that old value, we're going to add to it a space or concatenate a space, and we're also going to concatenate the counter, which at first you can see is 0. So the output is going to be space and then a 0. So let me go back over here and write it down on my notes just so I can show it to you. So right now I have on the output that is now assigned to a space, and I'll denote a space like that. And it looks like it's going to have the value of counter, which in this case is 0. All right, so what I do now in the next statement is I take the old value of counter, I increase it by 1, and the new value of counter is going to be whatever it was plus 1. Well, as you can see, the value of counter is 0. So let me go back over here, and I'll keep track of the counter. So over here, counter. Counter is currently equal to 0. But after this statement over here, you'll notice that it's going to increase it by 1. So whatever the counter is, let me get rid of that now and increase it by 1. So now it's 1. So at this statement right here, the counter is now equal to 1. What happens is we reach the end of our while statement. We go back over here and we ask the question, shall we do this again? Shall we go for another lap? Well, as long as the counter is less than the user number. Let's say that the user entered 3. Okay. Well, counter, which is now 1, yeah, that's less than 3. So this is a true statement. Since this is a true statement, we enter into the while statement and we perform this once again. All right, so what is this saying? Take the output, which is this over here. It's a space and 0. And what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to concatenate a space. All right, so let's concatenate a space. So that means I'll introduce a space like this over here. And also concatenate the value of counter. Well, what is counter? It's now 1. So 1 is going to be concatenated to the output. So now the new output is going to be this updated statement. All right. Next, we take the counter and we add 1 to it. Well, what is the value of counter? Looks like it's 1. 1 plus 1 is 2, so the new value of counter is 2. So this now gets crossed out because now it's equal to the number 2. Okay, let me go back over here. We have reached the end of our while statement. Shall we do this again? Well, it depends. If the counter is in fact less than the user number, then yes, we're going to do that again. So remember I said that the user number is 3. Is counter less than 3? Let's see. Counter is 2. Yep, 2 is less than 3. Therefore, this is a true statement. So now we go into the while statement and we execute this yet again. Okay. So what do we need to do here at this statement? Let's take the output. Well, the output is this. Let's concatenate a space. Okay, so let me concatenate a space, and I'll denote the space like this. Let's now concatenate the value of counter. Well, what is the value of counter? It looks like it's 2. So in other words, to concatenate means to connect or to add to. So we're going to add this to the already existing output. In other words, this is called appending. So now output is this so far. Next, we take the counter and we increment it by 1. So let's get this counter over here, whatever it happens to be, and increase it by 1. Well, the counter is 2. Let me cross this out, and now let me make this 3. All right, so the new value of counter is now 3 because it's been incremented. We are finished with this while statement. Let's go back to the top. All right, shall we do this again? We're going to go for another lap? Well, it depends. If the counter is less than user number, let's see. So the counter is 3. The user entered 3. Is 3 less than 3? No, it's not. 3 is equal to 3, but 3 is not less than 3. So this is a false statement. Once we have reached a false statement, we jump out of the while statement, and so now we're right here. Okay? So the while statement keeps on looping over and over and over again until this is no longer true. Then what we're going to do is we're going to say LBL result.text is going to be assigned whatever the output string is. Well, what is this output string? It looks like it's space 0, space 1, space 2. So in other words, 0, 1, 2 is about to be displayed to the label. So if I run the program, and I'll move this over here so you can see it, I enter the number 3, I hit submit, 0, 1, 2, with spaces in between are going to be displayed. If I enter the number 10, then from 0 to 9 are going to be displayed with spaces in between. Okay, so our program works, but not entirely, because what I wanted to display are numbers from 1 to and including the user number. So I didn't want 0 to 9, I want 1 to 10. So what's my problem? Well, the problem is over here, I am outputting the value of counter. At first, the value of counter is 0. So the first thing to be displayed is 0, but that's not what I want. I want from 1 all the way up to the user number. So let's see, why don't I do this? I'll put a parentheses around this. Over here, I'll say plus 1, and then I'll close that with the parentheses. So let's see what happens. When I first run the program, counter is equal to 0. Is 0 less than the user number? Yes, it is. Take the output, which is blank, put a space in front of it, and then concatenate the value of counter plus 1. Well, what is counter plus 1? Counter plus 1 is going to be 0 plus 1. So do you see now that the output is going to start off with the number 1? Then it's going to go 2, 3, 4, 5, so forth and so on. Let's see what happens. So let me start the program, move this over here. I want 3 numbers. So notice now it says 1, 2, 3. I want 10 numbers. So now we have 1 through 10. So just that little change right here allows me to display different numbers. Let's say that I want to start from 5 for some strange reason. I want to start from 5 and then go from there. Well, okay, let's take the number, whatever that counter is, and I want to add to that 5. So now if I run that program again and I type in the number 3, notice how we start from 5, and I wanted 3 numbers after 5, so that's 5, 6, and 7. If I wanted 10 numbers, then, 10 numbers, then that's going to be 5 through 14. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 numbers. Now I don't want to do that. I don't want to start 5. I'll just start from 1. Why? Because counter is equal to 0. And that's it.